Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, first and foremost, how are we feeling about the hat?
I mean, it's not as good as E-Rob's hat. And also, you're not wearing
That's true.
overalls with no shirt on underneath,
Yeah, well,
which was clearly the fit of the day. I mean, clearly,
easily.
like the big Ed Vega look, as we've talked about on this podcast before.
Yes.
Mark Cabali compared it to Vince Wilfork. Apparently, he did that for a Hard Knocks episode, probably a dozen years ago now. It was a good look, and the mustache too. That's the other piece of it. That
I know. Yeah.
Strong appearance from friend of the show, Elandon Roberts today.
You are correct in that everything that he showed up with today is much better than what I'm presenting right now. But this is just a little tip of the cap. This is a
little homage
on today's show. But Alan, just first and foremost, how are we feeling about being back at camp? I mean, this is when the players arrive, but this is your first time back at Latrobe too, and since last season. So how are we feeling day one back? Is it like going back to school?
Yeah, it's the first day of school, man. You got your backpack, you go see your friends. Yeah, I pulled in the parking lot, and Jenna Harner and Chris Carter and Mike DeFabo were all there. I was like, "Hi guys, yeah." It's the first day of school. It gets old fast, long day here. It's already. I've been here since 9 a.m. We're recording this at 6:30, so it's definitely a grind, but it's one I enjoy, and I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I will say too, breaking the fourth wall here. You guys can tell by the time that this is uploaded, recording a little bit later than we normally do. Didn't know exactly when the window of time for Mike Tomlin speaking is pretty much open. So we had to wait until after that happened to get Alan to jump on here. But we'll actually dive into some of his comments a little bit later on. But Alan, I wanted to just get your takeaways from some of the players that you got to talk to today, first and foremost. So kind of wherever you want to go with that. Anything like exciting or, that jumped off the page to you that anybody said?
I don't know about exciting. I just think I had some fun observations here, and maybe we can kind of go back and forth about them a little bit. Really fun watching Russell Wilson and his interactions and just the way he kind of goes about his business. I put a little video on X of him getting out of his car. G-Class Mercedes, just if you're, since we are a drive themed show, we feel like we can talk about the cars here. And he's got his book bag there, right? He's getting his book bag out of the back seat, and you see him like stop, and he's like rooting around in there, and he's like pulling the playbook out of his book bag so that he can walk out to us all carrying his playbook under his arm, like he's literally got his trapper keeper on the first day of third grade. And then like later I see him walking around campus, like carrying his helmet around. I'm just like, everything that you heard about this guy is 100% true. Like it is just that, like it is, I don't want to say it's fake, but it's affected, right? Like it's like when you hear a person speak with like a strange accent, you're like, is that how they really talk, or is this a bit that I'm just not in on, right? Like that, but that's who he is, right? And so I think that was interesting to watch. Very interesting to TJ Watt walks by in the middle of Russ's press conference. He stops and says, "Hey TJ, what's going on? Hey Tarsia, good to see you." Just very interesting to see his interactions. Every player I've talked to has raved about his leadership, about the way that he's steered the ship and done things with guys out in California and gotten people together. And I think that was what pole position was all about, was about getting here. And the best way to get here was to let the veteran who's done it all, who has this wacky try hard personality that will be great for this time. I don't think that means a whole lot going forward when the competition starts for real, but I think it's been fun to watch and certainly an interesting part of the dynamic there.
I saw somebody put out, it might have been Noah Strackbine, also a friend of the show, that he like named off every single receiver on the
Oh yeah,
roster right now in
yeah,
terms of guys that he's excited to work with and like who could step up.
yeah. He was like down to like Marquez Callaway and Connor Hayward. He got like 3 minutes of like praise for Connor Hayward. Like Connor Hayward doesn't deserve it. It's just not what you usually get. It's not what you're used to, and it's certainly interesting. It's different. He's a different cat, man. I think that's saying something. But yeah, he just went off and listed, and not only just listed their names, but like, okay, Marcus Callaway really fighting, for a spot, and Connor Hayward, he probably could have played 3 sports. He's so athletic, and we were throwing back shoulder fades to him, and I'm like, okay, like,
Okay. Interesting.
At the same time, like feels put on, but there's like a realness to it. I don't know if that's about the best way I can describe it.
I wanted to mention too, yet because yesterday, we actually used it as the TikTok/short of the show. You were talking about when we were talking about guys that are in the microscope. Specifically, what you said for Russ is about middle of the field usage, and then today goes on to talk about how he feels like he needs to get Darnell Washington the ball more, and how big that dude is, and how much of a factor he could be within the offense. So I just thought it was interesting. 24 hours after we had a conversation about middle of the field usage, he mentions a guy that certainly would probably find the majority of his receptions if he's going to see them in the middle of the field.
Yeah, certainly. And like I said, he also said good things about everybody else. So I don't know if that means anything or
Deuce
not.
Watts, he sees a big role for Deuce Watts coming forward in 2024.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so moving on from Russ, who else maybe did you have a conversation with today that there was something to take away from?
Well, I think the big news maker of the day was Najee Harris. We haven't talked to him since the Steelers declined his option back in May. Haven't talked to him at all, actually, since Buffalo. And a bunch of stuff with Najee. He said that was disappointed that the team didn't pick up the option, and that he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. He likes it in Pittsburgh. He likes playing for Mike Tomlin. He likes Omar. He likes Art Rooney. He likes the fans. He likes the city. I'm not sure we've heard Najee Harris say those things. I know that they certainly could be BS. But I first of all, Najee's a pretty straight shooter. And second of all, like, I don't know, it seemed he didn't have to say it the way he said it. It seemed genuine that he really does want to be here, which I'm not sure is something that I had a real read on. Like I think like we talked about, like, oh, he should want to hit free agency from a sort of financial perspective, right? Like looking at the money and the dollars and cents, but you still, it still certainly feels like he has an attachment to this team and this franchise, this city, that is real, and that he was really disappointed that the team didn't pick up his option because of that. It certainly does not sound like there is any movement about any kind of contract extension before this season. He basically said he's focused on football at this point. So if that was something you were still hoping for, I think you can probably put that out of your mind. He was asked about the team, if the team told him why they weren't picking up the option. He said they don't know what direction the offense is going. That's a very vague answer. It's probably correct, but we've talked a lot about it. It's really hard if you're a team to commit big money to. I mean, we talked about it in the conversation about Brandon Ayuk, but the same thing. You don't know what you're doing at the quarterback position. It's hard to spend a lot of money on the skill guys. Like, you may need that money next year to go sign the Dak Prescott, right? You may need every penny you have if this quarterback experiment this year goes down in flames. And so I think there's some not telling the whole truth there from the team to Najee. I'm not saying Najee's lying to us. I'm saying they're probably not telling him, the whole story. But I think there's a piece of truth to that. And then, Najee also has been throughout his career, been outspoken about how he feels that, look, running backs, you can only devalue us when it's time to pay us. The rest of the time, you want to use us as much as you can. And it's this double standard. And he sort of very frankly admitted, though, that they don't have any leverage. And that's why he's here. And he's not going to be holding out. And he's not going to be demanding a trade, because he understands the marketplace and that, there's just this is the best he's going to get.
Yeah, and this is kind of honestly the way that I've just envisioned this happening. I think that we've been on the same page in terms of that. Like, we don't see a extension happening. I also don't have any like reservations about the way that he's going to look or play this year. Like, I don't expect to see him to like super disgruntled and not competing out there because he doesn't have a contract beyond this year. I mean, if anything, like, he's going to be hungrier to prove to other teams and try to earn a payday somewhere else. So I don't think that should be any concern that somebody has. But going back to what you said before, just in terms of like, I think every player when they get drafted, there's some of that desire to obviously start and finish a career in the same place, as long as you're like relatively happy there. But for a running back, like, that's even tenfold much harder to accomplish in the NFL. Like, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't happen. Like, even Derrick Henry, right? One of the best that we've seen in this generation, not going to finish his career where it started. So it doesn't happen.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, same thing. This offseason. So, yeah, I get that. I definitely think it's like Najee Harris is not the most approachable guy for us, but I think when he does talk to the media, he's pretty good. He can deliver a message. He's smart. I think he did a nice job of articulating the way he's been feeling. And what is a tough spot? Like, you can say it's easy for me or you or the fans to say, well, that it was a mistake to draft him and that they're right to let him go. But I think there's a human element there too, where he's in a tough spot right now.
In terms of the offense stuff, like the direction, I know that we talked about it before. I don't know that I necessarily have this concern either, but people just think because the Steelers want to run the ball, Arthur Smith offenses heavily run the ball, that it's just like a match made in heaven. But when you talk about two that have done it very different ways, like going back to the way the Steelers have had success over the last couple of seasons with their concepts and then what Arthur Smith's bringing here, is there any concern from you that it's just like he specifically is not a good fit within this offense?
No, I think he's going to be a great fit for this offense. I think he's the closest thing you can find in the NFL right now to 2020 Derrick Henry. Like, they're very similar players. Like, I don't see how you can. I understand that like he hasn't done some of the things that they've been asked that he's going to be asked to do, but man, look at the guy. I don't know. I think he's going to have a really good year.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. I just wanted to put that out there to get your perspective on that. Was there anything else from what Najee said that we didn't cover?
No, he was a little bit vague about most of the rest of his answers. I think that's pretty much it. Talked to E-Rob, talked to TJ Watt, Jalen Warren, Alice Highsmith. I can't say there's like groundbreaking stuff I feel like we got to talk about from any of those guys, but if there's something on your mind, I'm all ears.
No, not really. I mean, I think, well, maybe for people that don't follow on social media and didn't see the quotes, because I know that Elandon kind of gave a reasoning what inspired his get up today. Maybe if we want to touch on that, because I guess not everybody's on social media that maybe watches or listens to the show.
Yeah, my first guess was incorrect as to the inspiration for his get up. My first guess was he just spent the whole offseason listening to Beyonce's new album and that he's just also gone country in a way that is, like
your second guess was he tuned into the Around the 4 and 2 draft show this past year. Saw me wearing a cowboy hat. No, but yeah.
The second guess might have been that like he got into like some weird like TikTok spiral and decided the best way to stay in shape this offseason was to go work as a ranch hand, and that he's been like down there in Texas like roping bulls and dragging steer around, just in his spare time to stay in shape. That would be very on brand. So that was my second guess. And then he, set me straight with a good answer about, hey, he just wants to show up and go to work, and where he's from, this is work clothes. And I thought that was funny. So yeah, absolutely. He's from kind of the southeast part of Texas, like all the way over by Louisiana. He lives in Houston now, Houston alma mater, but very industrial area, a lot of like oil jobs and things like that. And it's not the same kind of hardworking place as Pittsburgh, but it's definitely a hardworking place.
Oh, I wanted to say, I saw a video that he himself put up. I think it was on the Steelers social, but it was just him like saying about getting to training camp. Joey Porter Jr., I think you mentioned this, that it's pretty noticeable that he's put on some weight. And in that video, I felt like that was certainly the case. So I mean, is it noticeable now as well seeing it?
Yes. And it's also noticeable that Keanu Benton is thinner.
Okay.
I think significantly, like 10 or 15 pounds. Like it's hard to notice 10 pounds
Yeah.
on a big dude. Like I lose 10 pounds and I look the same. And he's a big dude than I am. But I think he looks in better shape and thinner, and Joey looks jacked. Like, that's about the only way I can say it. He definitely has been in the weight room. He's a guy that I think has that drive. He obviously has the mentor to get him there, and his father was a weight room freak in his time too. But I think he's certainly bulked up a little bit, and I think that's going to serve him well. I mean, he's already big and strong and physical, but I think maybe one of the there was a couple things that you look at his rookie year and like, oh, how could he clean it up? And I think one of them was the penalties. But the tackling was a struggle early too, if you remember. Like it wasn't fluid, and get bigger and stronger makes it a lot easier to tackle.
I remember going back to, I mean, like, obviously we're talking about training camp, and I think that you saw a little bit of progression just as the season went on. But I remember like going back to training camp where like he like missed 3 tackles in a row. One was on Gunnar Olszewski, and like people were talking about his tackling issues, but more so a form thing, obviously not like the lack of willingness to do so, just the technique wasn't there. So that would be certainly something to monitor, just hopefully continuing to get better. Somebody that I didn't hear a single thing about or see a video of him arriving, George Pickens.
I didn't see George at all today.
Okay.
Tomlin said
That's
they have full
like,
participation. Everyone's here. I did not see George. Some guys get there really early. I saw Minka at like 8:48 a.m. So like maybe he was really early. But yeah, I did not see George at all. I didn't see Cam Hayward either coming in.
Is there like a time that they have to be there by?
Yeah. I think it's like 2. And our kind of availability runs from like 10 to 1:30. So they can sneak in around us if they don't want to deal with us.
Are you surprised that Najee didn't?
No, I think this was all right, I'm going to check this box and then be done with it for a while.
Yeah, that's fair because he didn't at all, obviously, this spring. So that would certainly make some sense. All right. Anything I want to dive into some of what Tomlin said, obviously, but was there anything else before that?
No, I mean, I think that's the gist of it.
Okay. Well, okay. Where I want to start with the Tomlin thing, obviously, we can talk about anything that you heard him say and was on your mind. But the first thing I just wanted to check was the Cole Holcomb box, because we knew that I said, how early is he going to either talk about him or be asked about him? He will start on the PUP list. Not really a surprise there, but also added a couple other names that aren't going to participate right out of the gate. And Dean Lowry. That was the undisclosed one, right?
Yes.
And then Cordarelle Patterson.
He has some kind of leg, like lower, like I think
Okay.
it's knee or ankle. I don't remember, but it happened in OTAs.
Okay, gotcha. And then Cordarelle Patterson, not on the PUP, the NFI list as opposed to the PUP, but won't start out of the gate.
Yeah, so if you remember, Cordarelle Patterson came to OTAs late and was limited when he got there. So I'm guessing that is still the same injury that he suffered before he got to the Steelers, and that's why it's NFI. So the only difference between NFI and PUP is that PUP happened during a team something, right? During a game last season in Holcomb's case, during an OTA session in Lowry's case. If you get hurt on your own time, then you go on the NFI list. It's just procedural. It doesn't really mean anything at this stage. If you get to the point where you're not going to be able to participate by the end of training camp, that's when those things start to matter.
My big question coming out of this, Cordarelle Patterson not going to be a part of this at the very beginning of it. I know you said about not necessarily doing a whole lot of special teams right away, but with new kick return stuff, could see that pretty early. Who is it going to be doing kick returns? Is that Cordarelle Patterson?
It's a very interesting question. I think Jaylen Warren wants to do it. I think if it was a game, Jaylen Warren would do it. I think the team might be a little wary of using Jaylen Warren in that fashion on July 25th. So I'm not sure where we go from here. Maybe Calvin Austin. I don't know.
Quez, maybe he's done that.
Quez Watkins has done it. Yeah. There are a number of guys that have done it.
Just please
on
throw
the team
Plumlee back there.
Plumlee, man. Plumlee.
Just throw him back there. I want to see it. Actually, don't do it yet. Hold off until Saturday or Sunday and then do it because I want to see it take place.
Justin Fields. That's who. Justin Fields.
Yeah, both of them together back there. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Cole Holcomb, not a surprise to see him start on the PUP list, but obviously, right out of the gate, that could mean, an increased amount of reps for a guy like Peyton Wilson, a rookie who we talked about. Could he start as the dime linebacker? They're making it seem like certainly he's competing for that spot out of the gate. But this would impact the number of reps too he's going to get right out of the gate.
Yeah. And like we talked about, E-Rob and Queen, I mean, they do need some reps, but they don't need a ton. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Peyton Wilson and Mark Robinson at linebacker with the first team through a lot of training camp. And that's okay. I think that's a good thing for those guys. Mark Robinson's one of those guys we put under a microscope. I think, I saw him today. I think he's got a battle ahead of him to make a roster spot with Tyler Matakevich coming in. That was another thing that Tomlin talked about in Matakevich, wanting quality special teamers, guys. They're not trying to teach the job while they're also figuring out what the job is. I think a lot of years you have hope that your young players, the guys you've drafted as potential future starters or you draft as backups, you want those young guys to become special teamers for your team. Guys like Peyton Wilson, guys like Nick Herbig was last year, you want those guys to be special teamers for you. But I think in a year where the special teamers themselves don't know the role because nobody really does, I do think they're going to put an increased value on quality, experienced special teamers. So that's why I think you could see multiple special teams only players. Usually only have one of those guys, right? Where it's like he is just here for special teams. I think you're going to see two of those on the defense this year.
Interesting. Yeah. And then the other one, that Dean Lowry, like we mentioned, I think what's interesting with that one is we've talked about a lot of guys like DeMarvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk, Logan Lee, who are competing at the bottom of that roster bubble. That, Dean Lowry obviously in front of them on the pecking order. So these guys, they're going to get more reps too, right out of the gate with Dean Lowry not able to participate.
Yeah. And look, I mean, that's the battle. Like Dean Lowry's making the team. He's a vet. He doesn't need the reps. So there's no rush there, right? Like, I mean, I don't need to see Dean Lowry. So yeah, that's Leal, Loudermilk, Lee, those are the guys. Benton, those are the guys that need the reps.
You mentioned full attendance. Tomlin said the joint practice with Buffalo. We don't see the Steelers do a whole lot of joint practices, but what we just alluded to, with the new kickoff for one stuff, was the reason that he said that they decided to go with the joint practice this year with Buffalo.
Yeah, wants to see it live. And, you're going to get them. They're doing that the day before or 2 days before the preseason game with Buffalo. And you, of course, get some kickoffs in the preseason game. But the nice thing about the joint scrimmage is that you can go in there and say, this is what we want to work on. You're not sort of beholden to the structure of the preseason game. If they want to go out there with the Bills and run 30 kickoffs live, they can. Like, you can't do that in a preseason game. So I think it gets them the ability to do some of those things in a more controlled setting. We talked yesterday. I think this is something that's going to become more and more common as we go into longer seasons, shorter preseasons. I think things like that. It would not surprise me at all if this becomes, sort of a regular occurrence.
We even talked about specifically these two teams being partners on this type of thing very much moving forward because of Tomlin and Sean McDermott's relationship, obviously. And yeah, with Josh Allen and that roster, certainly a good test. Tomlin also, we knew this was the case, but nothing changing really with the quarterback spot. Russell Wilson still being in pole position as the starting quarterback. There will be some mix of reps though between him and Justin Fields, and not wanting to reveal the full plans, obviously, in terms of what those reps will be like.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's too smart for that. You're not going to trap him with that question now. Come on now. Let's get real.
But nothing that we weren't expecting to have happen when we.
I asked him about Cam Sutton, and he said that nothing is going to change about the way that we use him now. So that's very interesting to me. that you could.
Yeah,
see
we had a conversation about that.
full
Like, would
workload
they?
for Cam Sutton.
Yeah.
And then the battle is going to be with the twos during camp.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, we talked about that in an episode. Like, how do you kind of balance that, knowing that Sutton is the guy that you want down the stretch, but somebody's going to have that job out the gate, and kind of making sure that they're ready to do so. Whether it is Beanie Bishop, Josiah Scott, a lot of the big nickel with it being a third safety, maybe that's playing there with all three of those guys on the field. Like, who knows what the plan is going to be? But that's interesting to see just how they're going to divvy the reps up to make sure that everybody's ready for that.
Yeah. We get a couple good questions here. I want to get to.
Okay.
If you don't have anything else from Tomlin,
Nope, I don't think so.
First one, Dabitty Slaya says first
we've gotten. I think this is the second time that he's popped up with a question for us. So
and it's because hey, you guys, love the show.
There we go.
Locked On has a better theme though. I don't know if I agree with that. But love the show, though. Can't stress this enough. The addition of DB, a little chef's kiss there. My question is, where would Treylon Burks rank in this past wide receiver class, and what would you pay for him? I think that's an interesting question. Like, where would you rank in this past wide receivers class is kind of irrelevant. I mean, I don't know. If he had been in this class, would you have taken him before the third round? Probably not. But what would you pay for him is definitely a little bit interesting, right?
Yeah, like I'm trying to. So, are we viewing this in the scope of like him as a prospect when he was coming out?
Like right now, like
okay.
Knowing what you've learned about him over the last 2 seasons.
Okay, I mean, to be honest, I didn't love him as a prospect, anyways. I was like, he's good once you get the ball in his hands. How you getting the ball in his hands? Can't run routes. He kind of operate. He's like the worst possible version of Deebo Samuel, kind of.
Yes.
What would I pay for? Man. Day 3 pick swap.
Day 3 pick swap. Okay.
Yeah, like maybe maybe a 6th in Burks for a 4th, or a 5th in Burks for a 4th, something like that.
I think
based off your response here, I think that you might value him higher.
I think I would pay more than that.
Okay.
But probably not a lot more. But I think I would pay more than that. Maybe like the Steelers have 3 or maybe even 4 7th-round picks. So like Noah Strackbine is walking like a duck in the background here. I think I would part with one of them for sure, probably in addition to a pick swap, or then maybe just a straight up 5th rounder or something like that. I don't know. I think he's pretty valuable. I think he's an athlete.
I could certainly get on board with that. I'm going back to, and obviously they didn't end up getting this done, but what like people were throwing around as like the compensation that Courtland Sutton trade was a pick swap. It was like 98 for 121 and Courtland Sutton or something like that. And I guess maybe I was doing too much of trying to go based off that hypothetical. I would probably trade straight up a 5th.
Yeah.
If it came down to it.
Yeah, I think that's about the highest I would go. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good athlete. Let me say that. Also, could be your kick returner if you're looking for one.
I will say, I think that there's a little bit more value in what I believe his skill set is. I kind of said I feel like it's a very defined role, but in Arthur Smith's offense, I think that you can get those things out of him.
And I don't think they really have anybody like him.
Yeah.
Like they have this big pile of like wide receivers that aren't good enough to be wide receiver 2s, but are definitely NFL wide receivers. And he would fall into that mix as well. But I think he would bring something different to the table that none of the rest of the guys have in terms of his size, his run after the catch ability. Like they don't really have anybody else like that.
And plays on the outside, which is important, I think, when you look at the guys in this room.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think he's a good fit. And I think he's a good athlete. He certainly needs some coaching that he hasn't gotten or hasn't absorbed yet. But I think I'd pay a fifth for him. We got time for one more? Yeah, we got time for one more.
Yeah.
We have Gid. I don't, man, I'm struggling with this one. Anaya. Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Sounds right.
Hey guys, awesome insights. You are learning how to get your comment
There we go.
right.
Yeah.
Can't wait for the season to wrap up. Question about Roman Wilson. You keep mentioning he did poorly at OTAs. What specifically does he need to show improvement on during training camp? Love the show. Love you guys. Highlight of my drive home.
Wow.
I know,
They're
right?
probably super bummed. Was this from yesterday's episode?
Yes.
They're probably super bummed about the fact
They're
that
already
it's a later
home.
episode. Like, they're already home. Yeah.
I know. Well, I think he needs to catch the ball, and we'll start there. And I don't think it's hands. It's been more about like body control, and like he's been just really close to making a lot of plays, but didn't really make very many of them. And there's a lot of different reasons: fighting through contact, hand fighting, being like, not letting guys redirect him, where like a little hand check gets him out of the place he's like that's sort of what, like the things that happen to him, where like there'd be a little hand check which gets him like a foot away from where he's supposed to be, and then that means the ball's coming in a little bit off his body, which now makes it like a little bit more of a contested catch, and then he's not coming down with it, or he has to dive for it and he's not able to make it. Like there was no like big bad problems. It was just like a bunch of little things that all need cleaned up. And so that's why I'm like really hesitant to kind of make, like, on one hand, he's a 3rd round pick. He's a rookie. He didn't have a great spring. So I think the expectations should be low, but I think the promise is still really high. I haven't seen anything that gives me any pause about reevaluating what I thought about the player before, which I really liked, like just because, it's not a put it together right now. I still see it all the tools are still there.
Yeah, obviously I can't speak to, seeing him work out this spring or anything like that, but I feel like we've done a good job on here emphasizing that, this wasn't casting aspersions into what his Steelers tenure is going to look like, let alone even year one, and saying that, you prefaced by saying that this is what you would have said about Joey Porter Jr. in the spring of year one, and look how that ended up being. But I feel like a lot of people, even with us prefacing by saying that, have still just been like in panic mode when it comes to these things that we've said about Roman Wilson.
Yeah. And then I see other people, they're just like, oh yeah, Roman Wilson's the starter. And I'm like, just maybe, like there's
that's who was the guy? There was a guy on YouTube recently that commented and told us to pump the brakes about Joey Porter Jr. We need that guy to talk to those people about Roman Wilson.
Pump the brakes. Maybe we should just have a segment, since we are a drive show, where we just Peter Griffin. Whoa.
Yeah, Lois, this is not my Batman glass. Yep. Actually, that's pretty good. Like if we had to have one specific segment every day, although, people just mentioned they love the show. I don't know if we want them to tell them to pump their brakes, but
I don't know if we could do it every day, but it could be a recurring bit.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. Anything else, Alan, from day one?
No, man, we got a lot of these to do. I'm excited, fired up about it. And I'm fired up about you coming to join me. So we had a question yesterday about whether I'm going to have a partner for this. And I don't have a full-time replacement for Nick yet, but you're going to be joining me this weekend. So that's sweet. We're going to have some
when's DB will be there at some point too.
And
right?
then Derek Bell's going to be coming out the following week. So I got Ed Thompson here with me. So I'm not alone. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. And we will get that role filled as soon as we can. But we're gonna have some fun times here.
There we go. Other than at Saint Vincent College, Alan, tell people they can find you
at @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that bell for notifications, and we'll see you tomorrow.
There we go. If you are listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, and not right here on YouTube, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Just type in Steelers Afternoon Drive. We will pop up. Follow us on TikTok, Steelers Afternoon Drive over there as well. 90-second short form clips of the show. Follow me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.